All right. So I'm going to run through a number of, as quickly as I can, a number of just administrative housekeeping items before we start the formal portion of the meeting. But probably everyone has heard me say this about 10 times now, but I just want to make sure we are clear and on the same page. And the benefit, I think, is really to anyone who's calling into one of these meetings who's not been on the phone before and heard me say this. So just to state clearly, this is a business meeting of the New York City Water Board. Normally, we hold these meetings in person. However, due to the ongoing health issues, pandemic, we are working in this remote conference call format. We will be maintaining all the transparency of records we normally do and posting minutes and a transcription of the meeting's content to the Water Board's website a couple of days from now. I'll give you that website shortly. I would ask everybody, please keep their phone on mute unless you are speaking in order to limit the amount of background noise. We are making a recording of this meeting, which will not itself be, actually will be published on the website as well as the transcription in lieu of the video recording we normally make. The public is always, again, welcome to submit feedback or comments to the board on anything they may have in terms of questions with board business or billing or anything they like via email or by phone number or by written correspondence to the board. This meeting is not the forum to do that. There are other forums for that. This meeting is not that. The meeting materials we will be discussing are already posted to the Water Board website. You can access those at nyc.gov /nycwaterboard. They're on the right-hand side. There's a little vertical column labeled Announcements. If you look under Announcements, there's a clickable link that says Meeting Materials. If you open that up, there's a PDF packet with exactly the same materials. All the members and all the board and DEP personnel have in front of them now. You'll see the agenda and all the other documents we'll be discussing, and you're free to follow along if you like. And that information will be retained on the Water Board website for some time to come. For the last thing, for any members who have difficulty hearing, we have a real-time text captioning feature that's available now. It's run through streamtext.net. You have to access it by clicking a URL, which is fairly lengthy. So I'm not going to read the entire URL. But if you want to get it, what you do is go to the Water Board webpage, like I said, nyc.gov /nycwaterboard. Under Announcements, click the PDF for the meeting materials. On the agenda page, which is page number 2 of the packet, at the very bottom, there's a long URL with streamtext.net. Copy and paste that to your internet browser, and you can get closed captioning in real time of the contents of this meeting. As well as the transcript, again, the audio will be posted to the website later on. With all that said, I'm going to hand it now to the Board Secretary, Al Rodriguez, to start the formal business of the meeting.
Hi, this is Al Rodriguez, the Board Secretary. I'm now going to call the roll. Chairman Carney.
Here.
Member Carolina.
Present.
Thank you. Member Fernandez Ketchum.
Here.
Thank you. Member Freed.
Present.
Member Golden.
Present.
Member Sue.
Present.
Member Shaw.
Present.
Thank you all. Mr. Chairman, we have a board quorum.
Mr. Secretary, thank you very much. I want to welcome the members, staff, and any guests on the call to what is our first meeting of the calendar year. It's great to get together, even if it is virtual. I looked up virtual recently, and there are a number of definitions. One of them suggests that if a thing is virtual, it's simply made to appear to exist when in fact it doesn't, which raises the question whether we're actually having these meetings. That said, I'm sorry, I didn't get the snicker I was looking for.
It's funny. Well, some of us are muted, but I appreciate it.
Well, anyway, welcome to all of you, and happy spring on what is really a fairly dreary day weather-wise in New York, and of course, it is dreary too because it is one day after yet another mass shooting. Our thoughts are with the victims and their families. Some of us were very moved by what happened yesterday, very upset about it. It's a terrible commentary on any number of things. Having said that, we will go to the first agenda item, which comprises the minutes of the November 19, 2020 meeting. Assuming the members have all had a chance to review the minutes, are there any comments or changes recommended? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the resolution?
So moved.
Thank you very much. Adam, was that you, or Demetrius, was it you?
It was me, Adam.
Okay, Adam, thank you. Is there a second?
This is John. Second. Thank you.
John, thank you very, very much. What I'll do, since we have only 2 resolutions today and it won't require a lot of extra time, is to ask the secretary to call the roll, and we can either you are voting approval, or you're disapproving, or you're abstaining. Mr. Secretary.
Member Carolina, how do you vote?
Approved.
Member Fernandez Ketchum, how do you vote?
Approved.
Thank you. Member Freed, how do you vote? Member Golden, how do you vote?
Approved.
Thank you. Member Sue, how do you vote?
Approved.
Member Shaw, how do you vote?
Approved.
Chairman Carney, how do you vote?
Approved.
Thank you. That resolution has been approved, Mr. Chairman.
And unanimously.
Yes. That's correct.
The next agenda item is a presentation on the proposed deployment of design build. Whoever's going to do this has got the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, Chair Carney, fellow board members. This is Executive Director Joe Murin of the Water Board. Thank you for attending today. I'm going to give a very brief overview of the presentation that's going to be made on design build, because the details will be gone into by the team. But I wanted to go through and express why we're coming to the board for this review and consideration of a design build support and advisory contract. Many of you may or may not be familiar with design build, and we'll go into that, but we have this authorization from the New York State legislature, and the governor signed, to consider design build, and it's a known means of contracting and delivering capital projects that's been working throughout the country for many years. It's not as well developed in the New York City region in the city itself because there has been some restrictions. Some of that is now getting lifted, and we're hoping that this will become a recurring tool that we'll have in our capital delivery portfolio. And why we're here today is that, unfortunately, when this was passed, or given the consideration when it was passed, the deadline for having projects for consideration established by the legislation was December 31st, 2020. And that put quite a constraint on our ability to go through and fully understand and know how to deliver such projects, considering that you have never done this before at DEP. Compounding that has been the fact that we do have certain constraints, not having the expertise as well as the staffing that would have the ability to manage design build procurement. And that was even further added to during the past year with the pandemic having taken place. So that's why we want to bring this to the board for their consideration. We do expect that design build will be an effective tool both for time, making more timely delivery on capital projects, as well as we hope more cost-effective capital projects, which we expect would then help the system both in either being able to deliver more capital projects within the framework of the funding that we have, or even act as a potential future rate mitigation, which is, primary, purpose of what the board's responsibility is. We do have a team of, DEP personnel that will be speaking. It's going to be Deputy Commissioner Anna Barrio, who's head of the Bureau of Engineering, Design, and Construction for DEP, Agency Chief Contracting Officer Elisa Velasquez, Chief of Staff to the Commissioner, Kimberly Cipriano, Deputy CFO Michael O'Keefe, Deputy ACO Joe Vasiles, and Chief of Staff to Deputy Commissioner Barrio, Lindsay Delgadro. I will also ask that as people go through the presentation, they will be referring to the packet that Omar had posted on the website and that all the board members have. Each member of the EP team will identify themselves and they'll also reference, both for the transcript as well as for following through what slide they're referring to. And we expect that we'll pause each after slide so that board members can ask any questions and engage in the dialogue as to, the need for this contract.
So, Joe, you would prefer that we not interrupt going page to page, but only at the end of each of the pages if we have questions. Is that your preference?
I defer to the board members. If there's something they really do feel, I would just, ask that they do say, yes, they could interrupt. I think it will flow easier, but, I think that if they see something compelling, they should feel free to interrupt the speaker. But the speaker can answer it the same at the end as well.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
No, thank you. So with that being said, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Deputy Commissioner Barrio. Anna?
Thank you, Joe. And good morning, everyone. And thank you so much to the board for this opportunity for DEP to talk to all of you about design build. It's exciting for us, and it's a new approach. It's a new way to deliver projects. And we're going to talk today about benefits, as well as what we have done so far and what our critical next steps are. Before I go into design build, I do want to talk a little bit about design bid build, which is the standard today. As some of you may know, it's a very linear process whereby DEP as the owner will contract a designer, a general contractor, as well as a construction project manager. In some instances, we also hire contractors, up to 4 contractors for the 4 major trades. This would be for general construction, plumbing, electrical, and heating and ventilation. As you can see, this process, I am on slide 2, this process is linear. There's not a lot of overlap within the process, and that in itself creates risks in the schedule and risks in the cost as well. Now, with design build that we recently were given authorization to pursue, this was about 15 months ago, actually, it's a new approach, but it is a change in how we deliver our projects. It's a different mindset. It's a different process. Contracting, negotiation, and delivery are all different. And you will hear more about that from my colleagues later on in the presentation. We, as the asset owners, will hire a single design team. This team will span the design, construction, and commissioning of the entire project. So one entity is responsible for the cost, the schedule, and performance, as opposed to having, for example, 3 separate entities, which would be the designer, the builder, and the construction project manager. Having one entity avoids the situation where you have the entities possibly blaming each other as to who owns what, whether it's in the design or the construction or the project management of the project. So design build is a holistic approach. It's basically DEP as the owner, working with one firm as opposed to DEP as the owner, working with multiple firms. If we go on to slide number 3, design build benefits. And before I go into the benefits, I want to say that to gain these benefits through another project delivery tool, again, we have to change the way that we deliver our projects. And it is critical that we gain the confidence of the industry at the outset of this program. This is why we have worked diligently over the last 15 months to get to the point that we're at now. But to the benefits, it's faster construction, Obviously, there's one procurement instead of two, and possibly there are more procurements if we include the construction manager or additional contractors. It's faster construction because a lot of the work can be done in parallel. The design builder can do both at once. It's teamwork with a single point of responsibility. And faster construction is very important to DEP and obviously to the city due to the criticality of our assets. There is cost savings. We're looking at likely about 5%, could be more. If you look at the numbers nationwide, sometimes they're higher. And there are cost savings because there's a seamless communication between the integrated team, the designer and the builder. This seamless communication limits the changes. So there are savings on both time and money. Another benefit is that the owner gains cost certainty earlier in the project lifecycle, resulting in lower likelihood of cost overruns and, of course, change orders as well. The allocation of individual project risks is transparent and agreed to upfront. This is where DEP will negotiate the risk allocation at the outset. And again, yes, we're very good at negotiating risks, but design build projects are different projects, and we have to change the way that we do business in our negotiations. There's also accountability of risks borne by outside vendors is concentrated in a single vendor group. So as opposed, as I said earlier, to dealing with multiple entities, we're dealing with one entity. And lastly, there is room for innovation, and who doesn't embrace innovation? Since the design build team has more project control and accountability, design builders want to meet performance needs, not necessarily the minimum design requirements. And this is where design builders are compelled to be more innovative in delivering their projects. If you look at the illustration that's on the bottom, the owner's role are multiple roles, and then the designer's role is to deliver the entire project. And what we're talking about here today is how some of those roles are going to change for DEP. I would like to pause here to see if there's any questions before I turn it over to our Chief of Staff.
Do the members have questions for the Deputy Commissioner?
Yeah, I don't know. I looked through the presentation. Sorry, this is Arlene Shaw. I looked through the presentation. I don't think it's covered. One of the things I just would love to understand, and maybe if it's not in here, we can circle back on it. But what's the impact of taking this approach on our ability to procure WMBE contractors? I know DEP has traditionally had a tough time doing that with the, with the idea being that it's hard to find WMBEs to scale. So, I think that this would create a larger barrier because you're talking about you need someone who has basically all elements in-house. So just want to sort of understand, has anyone kind of ran the analysis on how does this impact our kind of efforts to get more WMBEs inside of the DEP contracting, sort of procurement?
Arlene, it's one of my questions too. Deputy Commissioner, if somebody's going to address that, then we'll put a pin in the question until we get to that presenter. But if not, then would somebody think through that a bit while we're sitting here and let us know the answer to that?
Yes, and thank you, Arlene. Thank you both for that question. Our agency contracting officer is going to speak later on, so let's pin it until later on in the presentation.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner. I have a couple of questions. This is Al Carney.
Hello, Al.
Where does, in the design bid build approach, where does the bid occur? And I'm looking at the
Okay.
at the visual, but
Okay.
Where is the bid?
So let me walk you through the process. I'll start. It's actually a little more complex than what we're showing. So to hire a designer, we would issue a request for proposals. after the design has been completed, we will issue a bid, and we will also issue an RFP for a construction manager. That can be done in parallel, but it's after the design has been completed.
Got it.
So we design, we bid the project, the general contractor will build the project.
Is there any loss of transparency with the loss of the bidding process?
With the loss?
Right. We're designing and building. We're not designing and then bidding and then, I'm sorry, the owner, I lost the thought. Forgive me. The owner, yes, goes to the designer. Is that contract bid?
Yes, it's actually solicited. This is for the design builder, Al. This is solicited through a series of, first we would issue an RFQ, request for qualifications.
Right.
RFQ first, Al, because we would shortlist qualified firms, and after that we will issue an RFP, a request for proposals.
Sure. Let me ask the question a little differently.
Sure.
Is the city required in the design build process to is a low bidder near certainty?
Yes.
Okay, so if we're not bidding, we have a greater opportunity to select among the designers,
correct,
regardless of the cost.
Correct.
Okay, and is that clear? I didn't hear that. Maybe the other members did, and I apologize if I'm just slow this morning. But I wasn't clear on that. Thank you.
Yes, and I didn't really touch too much on. Also, thank you for raising that question. But yes, there is flexibility in our selection, and that's another benefit to using design build.
And Chair Carney, this is John Golden. I had a quick question, which is, when the designer submits the bid in design build, what does the bid look like? Does the designer submit a preliminary design or a final design for that matter? And then as the selection is made, does that entail taking into account both the price and the design?
Yes, the designer will submit a 100% design. The contract documents are compiled, and all elements of design are included in the in the bid.
So the designer has done all of its work by the time it submits the bid?
Yes, this is under the traditional design bid build process. Yes.
And what about under the
design build
proposed revised version?
It's a little different because the design builder is proposing on delivering the entire project. It's not as specific as design bid build, because ultimately the goal of the design builder is to deliver the entire project, and the design builder has the opportunity to use innovative approaches to delivering the project. So that's why I was saying earlier, it's a very different approach, but there have been many successes through design build, but it's very different from design bid build.
I guess it's John again. Let me just ask a follow-up, which is, so what does the bid package then look like? I mean, if you're talking about a particular project, and there are very different interpretations as to what can go in it, or how the design can be done so that it's relatively more aesthetically developed, or whatever the issues are. How is that communicated in the revised process if the designer is not submitting a design?
On the
In other words, how do you compare the bids? How do you compare the bids? How do you know they're apples to apples if you don't know what the designs are going to be that they're bidding on?
Mhm. So on the traditional design bid build, I mean, they are given, for example, in many cases, just a set of unit items that they have to bid against. With design build, the firms are given clear performance metrics um, and performance standards that we're looking for, and it's a clear scope of what's expected for the firm to deliver within the project.
Okay, I think I understand that. And to follow up on Arlene's question, what is the expected impact of design build on MWBEs as compared to design bid build, where low bidder often will always, I guess, at least be the first considered for the project?
Yes.
I'm asking about the difference.
I would like to turn that question to our agency chief contracting officer, Elisa Velasquez.
Sure.
Yes. Hi there, everybody. Nice to meet you all by phone, and thank you very much to the members of the board for having us here today on this presentation. So I just want to on MWBE. I know there was one of the board members mentioned that, we do have challenges, and DEP traditionally has had challenges on that front. Again, we have massive projects. We have, our footprint is statewide. It's not just locally based in the city. Our infrastructure is very unique. So we have had, availability issues in the past, but we have really, I think, really have, improved over the last 4 or 5 years, certainly. We do run 2 goals programs, a state program and a city program. We have, and we have certainly in the last couple of fiscal years done well. We have certainly for local law 1 and for FY20, FY19, we had prime contracts that were, over $75 million. We had subcontracts that were over $60 million. FY20 was a little lower. That was just a city program. On the state side, we also had over the last 2 fiscal years over $100 million that we had given to MWBE subs on our state programs that were also city certified. And that's just on the large side. We also have on our smaller procurements where we have a lot more flexibility for MWBEs, where we could do micro purchases, where we could use the city's new non-competitive small purchase rules. We've actually, we've done very, very well, and we're hitting, an over 65% utilization, MWBE utilization on those types of procurements. So we're doing well, and we certainly don't want our pursuit of a new project delivery method, that being design build, to interfere with our progress, right? So we routinely, on our state programs, we have a 20% goal. That is what the state requires us to have. On the city side, most of our procurements are at a 30% goal. If they're highly specialized, that is different. Just because you utilize a design build project delivery method doesn't mean that MWBE requirements go away. The MWBE requirements will still, we will still have them. We have to, and again, I can't represent what that process looks like or how we arrive to those goals on the projects, because we've never done one. And part of what we're looking for here is, again, as a contract and a consultant that will help us develop those out so that we have very, very, we get out to the vendor community the message that even though we are pivoting to this project delivery method, our commitment to keeping our goals where they are is not waning in any way, and will be incorporated into that.
If I may interject, this is Joe Murin, to embellish on what Elisa just said, and I think to get to what, Arlene had asked as well, is that I believe this will give us an opportunity, if anything, to enhance our ability to secure the services of MWBs, particularly as subs on our larger contracts, and develop more holistic relationships with our contractors. Because as opposed to a low bid contract where they're going to be, going to the tried and true, we will be negotiating these at the outset, and part of the negotiation process that we will be able to build into there is making sure that all of those goals are incorporated in and how we're going to achieve those. So I think there's perhaps more of a space within the design build, framework to be more rigorous about enforcing and encouraging and bringing on board MWB either as the prime or as the subcontractors, because you do have more flexibility in how you're going to, choose your vendor. At least I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, Joe, that's a good point. And again, just kind of to piggyback on that, in our, when you have either a bid or an RFP and you get your proposal or you get your bid in, the vendor is telling you how they're going to, with their proposal and with their bid, they're telling you how they're going to meet their goals and usually who their subs are. And, the city has been trying to, again, in an effort to expand availability, really try to get to what the city's calling this disparity within the disparity, right? Having the same firms or the same type of firms used for the same type of work, and not being able to build out that availability in other areas, right? So to Joe's point, because this is not straight sealed bid, this is a negotiation where you have your team, not only your designer, but you will have your constructor, your builder, talking about what things are supposed to look like, and having that transparency and negotiating with the city, you will have much more of a say and be able to, I think, work with the team to identify MWBEs again where you can expand that base and make them work for that, and I think it's important.
Arlene, did you have any comment?
I think at the onset you guys said, are there other city agencies utilizing the model? Is there any way that we can sort of see what other people sort of what happened once they implemented the process? Because to me, a lot of it sounds aspirational, and I know that we weren't hitting our metrics originally. So I'm very sensitive to sort of being in a situation where we put in place a process that we hope has one objective, but in essence has the complete opposite impact of that.
Right. So Arlene, it's Joe again. I'll speak and probably then turn it over to Elisa or Anna. Is that there are within the city itself, the design build, paradigm is just getting off the ground. Probably the biggest utilizer of it, and Anna could speak to this, is DDC. And they have done it on, some smaller projects. They are looking to do on a very large scale on the jail projects. DOT has it somewhat, but they haven't gotten off the ground with that because one of their biggest projects is the BQE. Which, as we know, has a lot of issues surrounding it. A lot of the focus has been on large projects. That's not where we're going to be at. And I don't want to take away from the rest of the presentation. So maybe I'll just turn it to Anna to speak to that in terms of some of the historical places we've been at as the city with design build, based on her experiences at DDC. And then I think we could, take it back to the presentation, and that I think will answer that concern, or we could, weave that into the response from there. So Anna, I'll turn it back over to you.
Sure. And Joe, some of this is going to be covered by Lindsay DeGeldra later on, but I'll just touch on just some of the items that Arlene just mentioned. So yes, as you mentioned, Joe, DDC is working on a design build program, and one such big project, as you just mentioned, is the borough-based jail program. DOT, again, BQE, it's a big project but let me just say, DDC and DOT, they did receive authorization prior to DEP and the rest of the city agencies receiving authorization. So because it's fairly new to the city, Arlene, we have been very cognizant of that fact, and we have been talking to other municipalities as well. We have been talking to New York State DOT, and Lindsay can go more into that later on. We have also spoken to the Port Authority, and we're looking to, we've attended many seminars, and we're looking to speak to other municipalities outside of New York as well, so that we can really gauge best practices, lessons learned. And as I said before, we do want to get it right from the beginning. And I think one recommendation that we have received from other municipalities is that, just getting buy-in within the agency. It's not just one group. It's not just my group delivering the project. It's as Joe was saying, it's holistic. It's on the contracting side, it's on the procurement side under Elisa Velasquez. It takes an entire agency to deliver that program. But yes, it is fairly new. Yes, there are risks, but nationwide, what we have seen is that there's great potential for saving in time and saving in money as well.
This is member Adam Freed. Oh, sorry. I really appreciate the recognition and talking about the risks, and I know that was one of the questions I raised in the run-up to this meeting. Could you talk through some of the risk mitigation measures that you're putting in place as we begin this work, or contemplation of it?
Okay, and I think that is covered by Lindsay as well.
And I would ask that, so Adam, could we, and Mr. Chair, could we bring it back to the deck? And these are all great questions, and I think some will be answered as we go further on. So let's just move through it, and we'll just also make sure, that we have these, put these on the pin, that we're going to follow up on that question, Adam, as well.
Happy to do that, Joe, with one exception, and that is the question. Happy to do that with one exception, and that's the question that Arlene just asked. Actually, two questions. Are we able to collect data that will give this board a better sense of what has happened in other design build circumstances, such that we can get a sense of the impact on MWBEs? Is that data out there?
Yes, we will get that data, one way or the other, and get that for the board.
Terrific.
This is Evelyn, Chair. May I?
Yes, please.
Yes. So in addition, maybe a list, an identified list of the women business owners. Is there an identified list that could be provided that as a way of showing intent that you've researched? That's one. And I think it was Jill who mentioned something about there being performance metrics that you go by, maybe providing us with the metrics that you have to fulfill. That might be helpful as well. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Evelyn. We'll take that into account as well as we pull that together for the chair and for the board.
And then one last question, Joe. Ms. Velasquez mentioned a 65% utilization rate. I didn't understand what the connection was. 65% utilization rate of what?
Hi there. So when we do procurement on the smaller side for things, for micro purchases under $20 million or for non-competitive small purchases, which are solely geared towards MWBEs. Our utilization of MWBEs agency-wide on those type of procurements is over 65%.
Thank you. Thanks very much.
No problem.
So I think we're back to slide 4, and Anna, I believe that was going over to Elisa.
No, it's mine.
This is going over to Kim.
Cipriano.
Hi, good morning. So I've got the pretty easy slides for you all today. So just a sense to speak to some of the questions asked earlier, design build is an established delivery method across the country, and nearly every state in the country does have some level of design build authorization. This is on slide 4. And the map just kind of gives you a sense of how widely used design build is. So what that means is that there's a large body of information out there that we can leverage, and other municipalities that we can reach out to answer some of the questions that were raised today, but also to help inform our program, make sure that we're building and picking projects that are best suited for design build. If you move on to slide 5, you'll just see that in New York State, design build was extended to the Department of Transportation, the State Department of Transportation in 2011, and they have a strong track record of delivering capital projects via design build in the New York State area, mostly bridges and roads, as that's their core competency. And other New York State agencies are able to use design build to deliver their capital programs as well. In 2019, the state legislature did give New York City agencies, specifically DEP, among others, the ability to implement projects using design build as long as the project was greater than $10 million. That legislation requires that we release an RFQ, that's the first step in the design build process, by the end of 2022. And then as long as we've released an RFQ for a project, by then we are able to deliver that project design build. Our goal is to release at least one, but hopefully more before then, so that we are able to have a track record for if there are future considerations for the legislation to be expanded. And you may be familiar with some design build projects in the area, including the Kosciuszko Bridge and the Moynihan train station, both of which were delivered design build by the state. Lindsay can talk, I'm going to hand it over to Lindsay DeGallagher. She'll talk a little bit about what we've learned so far about design build and the other agencies that we've been talking to and their track record. So, Lindsay? Or, I'm sorry, is that
Hi, good morning.
Hi, how are you?
Okay, I'll go ahead. Sorry, I was waiting to see if anyone had any questions. Okay, as Anna mentioned, after the state passed the legislation in December 2019, which a little more than a year ago, we engaged an experienced design build professional from a civil engineering firm to work with us to evaluate our existing organization, how we're running projects, and help us prepare an implementation plan to set up a successful framework to deliver design build projects. From this effort, there were several recommendations. I'm going to share.
Somebody's talking in the background.
Can folks go on mute if you're not speaking, please?
So we developed an implementation plan with this design build experienced professional team, and there were several recommendations from that plan, and I'm just going to share a few of those major recommendations here and show that we've already made significant progress on many of them, and then maybe I'll touch on some risks too and see if you guys have any questions. First, create and train a team of design build champions in key strategic areas. Like I think DC Barrio said earlier, it's really a holistic effort. So we've trained folks to be the champion for the agency from the legal group, procurement, engineering, budgeting, planning, and the permitting side. We've already sent these champions and a few extra folks to training on design build principles and best practices. So we've really already started a lot of the learning. And this group is working together on many of these other items that I'm going to talk about. We were also recommended to evaluate the capital program now to identify what would be some strong pilot projects for us to do, design build. We've done this exercise once already as a group, and we're going to just continue to be tracking projects for design build as the program continues to develop. And I'll just add that in the process of working with the design build professional from the civil engineering firm who came in and looked at our organization, they helped us figure out what best practices and what criteria to look at when we're selecting good projects that we can be successful at the agency. So we're very mindful of that. Another thing we needed to do is draft new contracts that'll meet the design build expectations, especially of the industry. It's different than what we do now. So we're working on this. Our Bureau of Legal Affairs is coordinating with the law department, who's working with those other city agencies who are starting up their design build programs. So our target is to have a new contract template that we can use by the end of the year. We were also advised to engage with the industry to spur interest in our projects and this program and help them gain confidence that, you know, we have a plan and we're setting this up. And we're actually planning our first outreach event with the industry for next month. But along those lines, we've also been reaching out, like DC Barrio said, with other organizations around the country and in the region. Me and some of my colleagues have already attended a couple of the Design Build Institute of America's conferences. They have a general conference. They also have a targeted water and wastewater conference, which is actually coming up next month. And there you're able to meet a lot of other owners and you're able to learn from their experiences. So we've been doing that a lot over the past year and a half. And in addition to talking to, I think we said earlier, City DOT and the Department of Design and Construction, who've been working on this a little longer than us. They have less mature programs, but we can coordinate on the new policies and procedures we need to get in place. What else has been really beneficial to us is working with the Port Authority and the state DOT, who have presented to us their lessons learned. They have a lot more experience. They've done projects of different sizes. So we really plan to continue to lean on them and learn from them. And actually, they're very receptive to that. They're excited to be helping us out. So we're going to continue to coordinate with all of them as we go. And the last final item, which I was actually going to turn over to Elisa, the agency chief contracting officer, to get into more detail about the major last recommendation, which is really why one of the reasons we're here, to develop that new procurement process and the documents we need to support the program, because so much of that work happens up front in design build in that procurement process. So I don't know if there's any questions on what we've done so far that I could answer, and then maybe I could just quickly talk about any of the risks that the board member had asked about earlier.
For the record,
this is John.
Go ahead, John. Sorry.
No, please.
No, I can wait.
Same here. All right.
I'll wait too.
As directed by the chair, I will intervene. So has the work already been done to figure out the process for identifying what I understand in the design build world is sort of considered the best value bid rather than the lowest bid, or is that building out that internal infrastructure in order to make that assessment part of what the professional whom DEP is trying to hire,
right,
asking for authorization for the funds to hire, part of what that person would do, and would that be done by a committee? Would that be how is that typically done? Obviously, there's a fair amount of objectivity in the lowest bidder, and so to the extent subjectivity is increased, I understand that helps by avoiding change orders, but obviously subjectivity also introduces some risk, and so I'm curious about what's been done on that front already.
So I can just briefly answer that, and then if one of my colleagues wants to chime in, they can. But basically, there are different ways to do design build, and we have agreed that we want to do a best value type procurement, a two-step procurement process, and there is a lot that goes into that. It's very different than what we do now. So to define what best value means to the agency, we have more work to do there, and that's something we need somebody with a lot of design build experience to come in and help us define that for ourselves and really lay out that process, because that all goes into the evaluation of the proposals that we're going to get and how we determine basically when we put out that budget for the project, what is the best product we're going to get for, what we feel is important. So defining best value is a big part of what we need to do next, and then share that with the industry so that everybody can propose what we want. I hope that answered your question, but
it does. The piece of it that the one, Philip, that I just wanted to ask again more pointedly is, would the discretionary component of that, and I understand we don't have the specifics of it set up yet in terms of how it would be determined, but is it contemplated that the discretionary part of that would be decided by more than one person, by committee? Or
Yes. So we will be forming a team, and that team will have technical folks, procurement folks, operations. It'll be very important that we compose that team of the right people, including for our first few pilot projects, a professional practitioner from the design build world to help sit next to us and make sure they're guiding us to the right decisions.
Right.
Thank you.
And if I can also jump in, this is Elisa Velasquez again. So we, currently when when we do things by competitive sealed proposal, we have an evaluation committee that's selected throughout the agency, and they have to evaluate the proposal based on criteria that are in the rules, and then criteria that's built out by the expertise in the bureaus, or based on that particular procurement, right? And that's something we know. What the consultant that we're looking to onboard will help us with is to develop, a new evaluation committee process, which is your point. It's not going to be one person. It's going to be a team, and we have to put together a wholesome team to ensure that we're appropriately evaluating all of the proposals, all of the different aspects. And again, it's going to be different because we are now evaluating construction, right? That's part of it, which is not now. That's not the type of process that happens. It's a low bid process. So doing all that is going to be a very different type of orientation and approach for our for whoever becomes that team. That this vendor, this consultant, is going to help us build that and help us reorient in that way.
This is Demetrius, Carolina. From this holistic approach, can you speak to how time is an important element in terms of overall savings? It sounds to me, because it is a holistic approach, that a key element to this is start to finish, completion, and sustainability, of course. Can anyone speak to that, the idea of time?
This is Elisa Velasquez again. I'll just jump in, and then if any of my colleagues want to. One of the things and time is this is a great point. In the design, bid, build environment, you have designers designing. They have not spoken to the construction vendor. They might not know that what they designed when the construction vendor goes to construct might not have worked. And had there been collaboration up front, had maybe there been a construction manager up front that could have also intervened and said, you know what, we need to arrange this differently because the work has to be staged in a certain way. If all of that was discussed up front, we'd save time at the back end. And that's the beauty of the design build project delivery method, is all of that happens up front. Those discussions happen up front. And that team approach is, the idea is that it is supposed to save time. And we have definitely in the agency kind of suffered for that design bid build approach when we've had to go back and redesign and do things at the construction phase.
Yes, and this is Anna Barrio. I just want to add to what Elisa just said. Another element is that even, let's say, for example, for the design builder at the design phase, they can certainly be working with the team constructing the project. So therefore, they can be designing, ordering materials and supplies in advance as opposed to designing, waiting, putting out a procurement, and then constructing the project. That in itself can save so much time. So I just want to bring that out, that there's a lot of things that can be done, simultaneously, and that is what saves quite a bit of time using design build.
Thank you.
I think my last question, other than talking about the proposal itself, and for this record, I understand that the projects to be considered here will only be watershed and wastewater projects. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Well, thank you. If that's it for me, I can talk about risks. I can wait till the end. I don't know if I covered anything that the board member was interested in terms of risk, or I can turn it over to Elisa to talk more about this specific procurement.
No, this is Adam who asked that question. I think you've addressed my questions.
Okay, thank you. Well, then I'm going to turn it over to Elisa for slide number 7.
Hi again. Okay, so I also wanted just to, I think, give an idea of our shop here in DEP, the procurement shop. We do every fiscal year between RFPs and bids. We do anywhere between 120 and 130 per fiscal year. And those are very large undertakings, and that's also between capital and expense. So, for FY19, we were at 1.5 billion just for those, and in FY20 we were at 900 million. And so and that doesn't also include, anywhere from 270 to 300 change orders per fiscal year, all of our renewals, all of our small and micro transactions that we do. And we're a team on the procurement side. I also run fiscal, but on the procurement side of about 45 people. So it's a lot of volume that we have to get through per fiscal year. And the city, we have to obviously follow the city's procurement rules, and the rules sometimes don't lend themselves to have things go speedy. So what we're looking for here is approval for a contract that would be up to $1 million to hire a partner and to hire a consultant that has that significant experience dealing with design build projects, and that's going to do 2 things for us. Because we just don't have we don't have the bandwidth, we don't have the bandwidth to build out an alternate administrative infrastructure to support this design, to support this project delivery method that we've never used before. We don't have the bandwidth because we're so busy working on our regular stuff, and also too, we don't have the expertise. We are as been discussed, throughout this presentation, still in a design bid build environment, and that's what we know. So so actually, even if we wanted to try to take a stab at it, that's not our expertise. So the consultant that we would be onboarding would really be helping us with both. And again, developing these new policies and procedures around design build that we we don't have that expertise to do. we need to start immediately. We're running up against, as Joe Murin mentioned, the sunsetting of the legislation. And in order to begin all of the work, you have to have the rules of the road, you have to have the parameters, and you have to have those administrative policies and procedures set up. That's your backbone of the entire program. So even before we start putting out those RFQs, working to identify the projects, working with the BEDT team, we need to be doing that. So we need to really, really, really start work now. And that's another reason why coming to you is important, because it does save us time. So we would really like to get to work before June 30th, and that leaves us 18 months to complete that groundwork and to then, work on the specific RFQs. So the key activities that this consultants and that the procurement would achieve for us is, first and foremost, is to develop a work plan and a schedule that gets us a definite RFQ out by June 2022, but also gives us the flexibility, if we're up and running and we're doing well, and my money's on us, I believe that we can do that. We would be able to put out additional RFQs, so we would have additional projects going. And that would be really good, I think, for the agency. We also have to, just like I said, create all of those internal documents and training manuals and FAQs. Training is going to be, and change management is going to be really important for my team, and that is something that this vendor will help us with. And also very, very important, again, forms, templates, but communication material, and helping us communicate with the vendor community and all of our other stakeholders, including, our MWBE stakeholders, our Office of MWBE, to make sure that they're included, they know what we're doing, and communicating as we're going, and making it an inclusive process. So I also want to just tag in Joe Vaisels to see if he wants to add anything here.
Thanks, Lisa. Good morning, all. Joe Vaisels. Yeah, I mean, I would just add to what you heard from Elisa and our other colleagues that, design build is new to DEP, but it's not new. There are people out there who are quite competent with design build, and that's the expertise that we seek through this procurement. We still have to follow all the city's PPB rules and the other guidance that, direct procurement in New York City. But at the same time, there's also a set of, standards and best practices available regarding design build itself, and people who are, professionals who have great experience in that. So really what we're looking to do with this consultant is to bring those two things together. We need to bring in that design build expertise to help us, incorporate our own, rules and processes that are unique to New York City. We essentially want to bring in this expert to help us through these pilot projects. As you heard from my colleagues, the design build process is quite different than design bid build. Most of the work is done up front on our end. We have to have all of these discussions and get all of our performance-based specs together in advance of awarding any sort of contract. Even the actual, selection process itself is so much more complex and different from design bid build, where instead of just reviewing a proposal, we get in qualifications, we make a short list of vendors. Then we have, we issue an RFP, and we have, proprietary meetings with each of these highest rated vendors where they have some input as to what goes in the final documents. And it's a very collaborative effort. And, it really just requires that we have someone sitting on our side of the table to hold our hand who has that particular design build expertise to show us where the pitfalls are, really, to make sure that we're including and considering everything in that document, up front. Because once we award a contract, we've essentially done all of the work that we would have had 2 or 3 opportunities to do under design bid build, where you're going out with separate procurements. So we feel confident that, our team is going to be ready to do that with this expert on our side. And the thought being that, after we get through our few pilot projects by the 2022 deadline, we'll be then positioned, with some experience of our own to see through additional projects without that sort of consultant help, if the legislation is expanded. And that's all I have.
Mr. Chair, this is John Golden. May I ask one other follow-up question?
Yes, of course.
Given that during the course of the conversation, the reference to the consultant has sounded as if what is contemplated is an expert, not a consultancy that has necessarily a staff of people that would be working on this, but that we really need the expertise of a person who has the design build background. And I understand that, and I know that there's been a lot of work done with design build around the country, and a lot of it's been quite successful in terms of saving time and saving money. My question, though, is have we considered whether it is more economical to hire a design build expert rather than to put out a contract for up to $1 million to retain one from the outside?
It's a great
John,
question.
This is Joe Murin, and I'll start it, but then I think either Anna or Lindsay or Elisa could step in. I don't think that is our intent to have one person. It really is, we believe that we need a firm for this because there are firms out there that have the suite of responsibilities that Elisa just went through. And we feel that believe that right now, that's what we need to, as Elisa said, to get the backbone of this up. And I think that would be where we might move to in the future, where we would be hiring particular staff once we get through this phase. And that's why we're looking at it as just a transition for us to be able to get these parameters established and the backbone of how a design build is going to work. Then, overlay it onto the suite of projects that we're considering, which is just very limited right now. And we're not looking at anything as large as what DOT and DDC are talking about, such as BQE and the borough-based jails, because we want to be able to have this be successful going into the RFQ process by the end of next calendar year, and then be able to build on that so that we can then be able to demonstrate that this is an effective tool that we want to be able to get long-term reauthorization from the legislature that we could be doing this on an ongoing basis as DEP and as the city. I will turn to Anna if you wanted to add anything, or Lindsay on that.
Okay, this is Anna Barrio. I just wanted to add that there are some municipalities who have set up a dedicated separate alternative project delivery group within their organizations. But as Joe was saying, we're not quite there yet. That would be something that we would certainly consider long-term. And when we have a better sense of what this process what the end result of this process will be. And also we want to ensure that we would be successful. But ultimately, yes, that would be our goal. But there's still quite a bit of work to get to that point. We just need a lot of guidance, especially at the beginning, as Lisa was saying. Procurement is key. Ultimately, the delivery is key on my end, but just as important is the procurement side of it. Just getting it right, getting the confidence of the industry that they see that, yes, we value this process, that we're methodic in how we put together this program. I think that is key. We just need that credibility, that support. And we just don't have the skill set internally. And to bring others from the outside would be, there are hiring restrictions, and that is a time-consuming process as well. So that again would add to the time frame and we don't have a lot of time, given that we just given this authorization not too long ago.
And is the RFP that is contemplated to be put out for the expert on this one that would be oriented towards hourly billing or flat billing? What is the nature of how this would work?
And its term, how long do you think you'll need it?
Joe V, do you want to take that?
I think, we're still discussing that, and we'll have to get back to you on exactly how we're going to structure the cost. But, we're looking at this as something that would help us through our initial pilot projects. And those have a deadline of release by 2022, by the end of calendar 22. So, the term would probably be aligned with that.
And the reason I ask that is because if in fact the whole staff is needed, that obviously has different considerations than if we're really expecting the use of a sole expert, in which case $1 million would seem like a substantial sum to be allocating towards this project.
Yeah,
No,
we
John,
definitely think it
John,
would not be one individual.
It's up to $1 million.
Yeah,
and it's
and
definitely
it would
not
definitely
one.
be a staff.
Yeah, we're expecting it to be multiple staff, with the skill set and having had a background in having developed these types of, templates and processes in previous design build, environments.
Well, that's
Got it.
my
Thank you.
question, actually. Who you're contemplating hiring a consultant who is in New York and who has worked on New York projects. How are they rated? Well, maybe they worked outside the state as well, but how do you rate them given the size of the system here? Who else? Who are the people who have worked on systems this large and this complex, such that you can actually make decisions, quality decisions, as to whom you will select?
So this is Elisa again, and there are I get it that our system is unique and it's very large, but out in the West Coast, design build is almost the preferred project delivery method. So you have a lot of the utilities on the West Coast, and certainly in other parts of the country. We have, there are many firms that are national and that have done design build work on other, on other water and wastewater utilities around the country. Also, another big utilizer of that method are big universities. So like Penn State is like its own city. It does a lot of its work by design build. It's got its, I think it even has its own kind of like little water system over there or whatever. But there's several large universities like that also do design build, where the same players who consultants who play in the in the public space also play in the private space. So there's capacity out there. I think we have to, again, as we're evaluating the proposals, we have to put together evaluation criteria where, where we're looking at their prior projects and at their qualifications to make the best decision.
This is Anna Barrio. Yes, that is correct, Elisa. And I just want to add that we also have to keep in mind that design build best practices are universal. So whether the project is a small project or a much larger scale project, the level of effort you can say is almost the same. So that's one thing to keep in mind. And this is through many discussions with the Port Authority, State DOT, as well as other consultants. And that's one thing that they have stressed. The level of effort will probably be the same. What's important is that we have to make sure that we retain those aspects of best practices when it comes to design build.
Fair enough. Thank you. Are there other questions from the members? Hearing none, there is a resolution that begins on the flip side of that very pretty picture that we all have in our packets. It's a page and a half long. It's dated March 23rd, 2021. Have the members had a chance to review it? If so, then may I have a motion to approve it?
Hey, Mr. Chair, can I, this is Omar. I would like to make one amendment to the resolution, if I may. At the very
Well, of
bottom.
course you may.
At the very bottom of the first page, we say up to 2 additional requests. Why don't we make that 4? That's what we've been talking about. And we originally drafted this more narrowly. We kind of expanded the scope of what we thought we could do later on. So I'd like to amend that from 2 to 4, if I may. It would not affect the dollars, but affect the number of
I
samples.
was just going to ask you, Omar. Thank you.
Yeah, the dollars aren't going to change. It's more projects for the same dollars.
Okay. Fingers crossed. May I have a motion, please, to approve the resolution?
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chairman. It's John Golden.
John, thank you very much. Is there a second, please?
I'll make that motion. I'll second it. This is UK Sue.
That's UK. Thank you very much. We'll conduct the vote as we did for the first resolution. And Mr. Secretary, will you call the roll?
Certainly. Member Carolina, how do you vote on the resolution?
Approve.
Thank you. Member Fernandez Ketchum, how do you vote?
Sorry, I was muted. Approve.
Thank you. Member Freed, how do you vote on the resolution? We'll come back to Member Freed. And board members, you might consider turning off your mute button. Member Golden, how do you vote?
Approve.
Thank you. Member Sue, how do you vote on the resolution?
Approve.
Thank you. Member Shaw, how do you vote on the resolution?
Approve, but I definitely want to make sure that we're seeing data as this unfolds and that we invest time with some of the other agencies to see the impact of this on sort of contract procurement.
Thank you, Arlene.
That'll be noted in the minutes. Chairman Carney, how do you vote?
Approved.
Okay. Member Freed, how do you vote on the resolution? Okay, it appears Member Freed is not available to vote. Okay. This resolution has been approved, Mr. Chairman.
And unanimously. Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. We are at agenda item 5, the financial and water consumption update. Joe, are you going to do that?
I believe Omar will take us through that. Omar?
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Chair, if I may, this is Evelyn. I have a prior commitment, so I have to jump off. Unfortunately.
Well, Evelyn, we just finished the last the second vote of the day and the last vote of the day. Do enjoy your day. Thank you for joining us.
Okay.
Thank you,
Thank
Evelyn.
you. Sorry about that. Thank you.
No, you have commitments. Go take care of them.
Thank you. Okay, take care. Bye-bye, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, Evelyn.
This is a very brief update. We wanted to keep the board and the public appraised of how revenues are shaping up. We can give you an update on where board operating revenues are through March 19th. They are at $2,739 million. That is 8.3% ahead of the revenue plan we had in place for this year. The revenue plan, as everyone remembers, was on the conservative side, given the pandemic and what we've seen that do to water consumption and delinquencies. And although we are ahead of plan, we are, if you compare this year, revenues this year to where we were this time last year, we are down about 7.3%. So we're doing better than we had budgeted for with an admittedly conservative budget, but we are nonetheless still down from last year. Not down by more than expected again. It was all taking into account the original budget, but revenues are lower. In terms of water consumption, it's a similar story to what we've been reporting throughout the fiscal year. You're seeing overall upticks or kind of flattish consumption on the residential side, offset by fairly large declines on the commercial and industrial side. Overall, citywide, water consumption by metered customers through the end of February was down about 5% compared to last year. That comes on the back of a smaller drop last year. Last year was down about 3% year over year. Year to date is down about 5%. What you're seeing is actually a pronounced uptick in water consumption by the smallest residential properties. The tax class 1 properties, the 1 to 3 units, are up about 4% year over year. The multifamily world is down about 2% overall, but that's a quite large, complicated category. But generally, what you see is the co-op type properties, affordable housing, city-owned housing is really up, and condo properties are generally down year over year. But the real large areas you see again is on the commercial industrial side, where year to date the usage is down about 20% year over year. That's no surprise. You're seeing lower occupancy in the commercial space. You're seeing the retail stores open less. You're seeing lower passengers in the transit assets. Those things together work out to lower consumption. So those are the key updates we wanted to share, kind of in line with the last financial consumption update we provided the board. We'll have more detail on all of those topics when we come back next month for the next meeting.
Omar, do you have any in front of you any information regarding delinquencies? I know you often do, but
I do. I mean, yes. I'd say it's a similar story to what we reported previously. Delinquencies are elevated. I mean, the main cause we would point to is just the economic effects of the pandemic, which have strained household budgets. They strained landlords, they strained businesses, and people reduce their spending when that stress happens. And one of the places they've chosen to reduce spending is on utility bills, ours included. That gets reflected in just higher accounts receivable and higher delinquencies. We do a standard kind of aging report where we look at everything from technical delinquency at the 30-day mark all the way out to the longer term stuff, 1 year plus. We're trying to be a little lenient in understanding, just given the stresses. So we've been focusing on the 6-month mark as kind of the place to really look at for the trends. And I'd say it mimics what you're seeing with the usage patterns. The delinquencies are higher across the board. The increase is most pronounced year over year with the commercial industrial properties, substantial increases percentage-wise. You're seeing increases as well, not to the same percentage degree with the larger residential properties, but still quite pronounced. And then you're seeing increases, but more modest type increases, still noteworthy, but not of the same magnitude of the larger residential and commercial properties on the small residential side. So growing delinquencies across the board, but the most pronounced on the commercial industrial side, with the smallest increases on the small residential side, and the larger multifamily is kind of in the middle between the two.
Okay. Thank you, Omar. Are there questions for Omar on his report? Hearing none, we're going to go to the investment report for 2021 and for 2021 first quarter and second quarter.
Yeah, so this is also another quick update. These reports tend to get, the investment reports for the board, just for the public's benefit, tend to get more exciting in the second half of the fiscal year for a technical reason, which is how we fund the board's financial obligations. I won't bore you with the details, but the upshot is we tend to build balances in the board's investment accounts in the second half of the year before we hand that money over to the city or the water authorities. We have to. In the first half of the year, we're transferring the money out almost continuously daily to the city or to the authority. So these reports are fairly boring and unexciting in the first half of the year. The upshot for the first quarter is we ended the quarter with $132.7 million of assets of investment assets at fair market value. The entire balance was invested in U.S. government treasury bills. Bills, just for everyone's benefit, are U.S. government bonds with maturity of less than 1 year. They're very short. They're short term. They're low risk. It's government credit risk. They're low yielding as a result, particularly in this environment. The typical rate of interest on these during the first quarter is 0.1%. But a safe kind of low return investment we use really as a cash substitute in place of keeping the money in a deposit account in the bank, which would have an even lower yield and be a same or even higher risk potentially. In the second quarter, we ended with $258.9 million of assets at fair market value. Again, same asset composition, entirely U.S. government treasury bills. Those 1 year or less to maturities. They have typical yield in the portfolio 0.1%. In neither the yields are so low and the volatility of these instruments is so low that in neither quarter do we have any realized or unrealized gains or losses. So again, kind of managing the portfolio to a cash substitute type of portfolio composition. We'll update you on the third and fourth quarter reports when those become available. The balances will be larger, but consistent with the board's direction, the investment guidelines, the portfolio assets will still be principally treasury bills and a tiny cash balance.
Are there questions for Omar? Hearing none, the last agenda item is an update on the board's contracts and amendments to those contracts, which is the last page in the deck that we have.
Yeah, so there's nothing major to report here. I mean, the spending to date is in line with what we had set out in the board's operating expense budget at the start of the year. No major amendments or variations to this. We've processed a couple of contract amendments. We have a contractor helping out with the COVID response on the wastewater treatment supply. It was a very tiny dollar contract. The individual's been a tremendous asset, but it was much needed expertise we needed in a hurry. So we brought him under the water board to help out the water supply group. We're going to keep him for another year, we think. The main money we spend on the contract side is really with the service line protection program. And that's really where 95% of the dollars on this schedule are accounted for. That's a program which it continues to have quite a bit of benefit for the system. It's a sort of warranty type program that protects against the cost of damage or line breaks or clogs on water and sewer lines connecting a property to the city main. That contract continues on budget. We continue to kind of work with them to troubleshoot kind of issues ad hoc, which is one of the things we'd agreed to do back in 2019 when we last extended this contract and brought it to the board. It continues to be a constructive relationship. We're trying to help them out where we can, and we certainly intervene when we spot issues or things that strike us as slightly off. Those are the main updates. It's all kind of the same. Otherwise, on the same mix of of vendor agreements and everything kind of in line with the budget amounts we'd promised earlier.
Questions for Omar? I want to thank the board for its vigorous participation in portions of today's meeting. Is there any further business to come before the board? Hearing none, may I have a motion, please, to end the meeting, adjourn the meeting?
Mr. Chairman, this is John Golden. With great thanks to the DEP staff for all of the work that was discussed today. I know none of this just appeared on its own. I move to adjourn.
Thank you very much, John. Is there a second? May we have a second motion, please, for adjournment? Looks like I'm alone.
Can you adjourn yourself, Mr.
So
Chairman?
moved.
You can second that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Rodriguez. I appreciate it. Then the motion's been properly moved and seconded. We are adjourned.
Well, actually, Mr. Chairman, for purposes of this meeting, I think we should take a vote of the members that are actually still on the call.
if you would like to do that, Mr. Secretary, then of course let's do that. We'll take a vote. Mr.
Yes.
Rodriguez, would you walk us through the
Yes.
roll?
Member Carolina, how do you vote on adjourning the meeting? Okay. We know that Member Fernandez Ketchum had to leave the meeting. Member Golden, how do you vote to on ending the meeting?
I vote to adjourn.
Okay, thank you. Member Sue, how do you vote on adjourning the meeting?
I vote to adjourn.
Thank you. Member Shaw, how do you vote on adjourning the meeting?
I vote to adjourn.
Thank you.
Vote to adjourn.
Thank you. Chairman Carney, how do you vote?
I vote for adjournment.
Okay. And finally, Member Freed, are you available for a vote? Okay. Mr. Chairman, all the members that are on the call have voted to adjourn the meeting.
We are adjourned. Thank you very much, Mr. Rodriguez.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.